schools in Sacramento, where we were living at the time, just shut down. Much like what happened to you guys and wherever you live here in LA and other places. And we were dissatisfied with it, but we have been and still are public school parents. We really believe the system can work and should work, and so we want to make sure it does work. So I'm going to run through a few numbers. This is the part where get your wine and drink for a minute. The state of California has 6.6 million kids ages 5 to 18. It's a lot of kids. It's more kids than most states have people. In the public system, we have 5.9 million kids that go to our public schools, K through 12 or TK through 12 now. But that's been on a decline over the last several years. In fact, for a long time, California was growing up until the last few years. California was supposed to eclipse 40 million people a couple years ago, and we didn't. And in fact, we lost the congressional seat because a lot of our friends left. But here's the deal. We lost 271,000 students in our K-12 system in the last 2 years. 250,000 kids disappeared. We have 58 boards of education, all the counties. We have 10,000 schools and 319,000 public school teachers, a few which are here today possibly. I know I talked to one who's taught. I taught 4th grade. There's one there in the back. I see you. Teachers are awesome. I love teachers. They make the world go round. And they really build a lot of dreams for a lot of kids. And many are mentors and incredible people. But we have this thing called the teachers union, which cannot be confused with the teachers. One teaches, the other one manipulates, lies, and leverages kids and makes them political pawns. And I hate to be so brazen about it, and pardon me if I'm too direct, and pardon me if you hate the idea, and pardon me if you're a member of the teachers union. Because what's happening right now is we have a group of people who are working in complete opposition to our wishes. That's why Julie and I became fast friends, because she was fighting an entrenched bureaucracy that shut our schools down and didn't want to get back into schools. And when we negotiated to get back into schools, there were all sorts of caveats and requirements and constrictions. How many of our kids have survived this without any mental, emotional, or social damage? In the state of California, though, out of the 6.6 million kids ages 5 to 18. Do you know how many kids we lost for COVID? 43. Statistically, we lost 0.0% of kids in COVID, but they were the ones that became our greatest hostages. So when you spend $128.6 billion for education, K through 12 in California, on average, that's $22,893 per kid. Per kid. The average size of a classroom in California is 25. So just multiply it out. Simple mathematics. That's $575,000 per classroom. Does your kid go to a $575,000 classroom in public school? Is your teacher paid well enough? Where's that money going? I mean, just think, this is just math. Right? This isn't ideological, it's just math. But even worse, California this year was ranked 50th in literacy in the United States. 50th. Not 48th, not 49th, 50th. Now we used to say, thank God for Mississippi, right? Poorest state in the nation, terrible education system, at least that's what we thought. Except for, do you know the only state that actually improved their academic outcomes in 2019, the last time they reported these numbers? Mississippi. And in California, the Superintendent of Public Instruction is also the executive director for the Department of Education, which this year alone has 2,400 bureaucrats that work for it. So I don't know if you read the EdSource story yesterday. I was quoted in. It was awesome. EdSource was trying to figure out what's going on. Why aren't we getting these test scores on math and science and reading from the different districts so we can compare? Every year between August and October, these scores come out and they put them forward. Last year was a little bit different because of COVID and different things. They waited a little bit longer to make that happen. But this year, things have returned generally back to normal, right? It turns out that when LAUSD produced their scores, they were pretty bad. Same with Sac City Unified. So a couple of the bigger school districts put their scores out, and it looks terrible. The learning loss is significant. Significant. If you're going to go to places like San Francisco Unified, the average teenage black young man only 15% are prepared to go to high school right now. 15%. But when they went to do it, it became so woke that we had 1,200 math professors, academics, and Nobel laureates write to the superintendent say, stop. Stop what you are doing. It is not working. In fact, it will ruin STEM, it will ruin science and medicine and accounting and public health. You can't persist on this. Right now, there's a movement to make it look like 2 plus 2 is a white supremacist form. I wish I were crazy. I feel like I live in a bizarre world in Seinfeld. So he wasn't going to do anything about it until after the election in June, and guess what? I came in second place. And I called for this back in April. I said, stop. If 1,200 academics say stop, you should stop too. So in July, he sent a quiet letter to the Board of Education. He said one thing: we're going to hold off until after, there's a word, it starts with an E and ends with election. We're going to hold off till right after the election. So if you don't want things to be known, wait till December. We know that it's broken. Let me give you some hope. I am running to put parents back in charge. Thank you. It's time to add parents back in the education equation so that they can be full partners with teachers and administrators and school boards, instead of being the last person consulted in every single decision. And most of you are probably not right-wing radicals. You're just parents who have now been called right-wing radicals and fascists, right? You're not. You just don't want crazy things to happen to your kids. You don't want kids being neglected and taught crazy things. First thing I would do is hire a chief parent advocate.
Ooh, yeah.
That person would be in charge of dealing with and mitigating all issues concerning parents, which is pretty much everything in education. Right now, if you have a curriculum process, the parents are always the very last people consulted. The last. They would now be the first. I would also stop all curriculum development right now. I'd say stop. We're going to take a deep breath and come back and have parents come to the table and have a conversation. That doesn't mean we drop our standards and change things and have illiterate hillbillies running the show. It just means that parents say, I don't kind of like that thing that has nothing to do with history, reading, or math. Number 2 is we'd have a kids first audit of the Department of Education. 2,400 bureaucrats, what are they doing? So we would have a conversation about what's important, what's law, and what can we get rid of and send back to the locals. And in doing that, the third thing I would do is have a conversation with local trustees and superintendents. Right now, there's about 6,000 school board members throughout the entire state, and I'd say, let's have a conversation in Sacramento. Let's talk about what you're actually doing at the local level, and how can I get out of your way? My background is I spent 20 years in the legislature, 17 working as a staffer. I spent a short period of time part of finance, running the education budget for those kids that are incarcerated in our state, which there's about 10,000 of them. At least when I was working, there's about 10,000 kids that were basically locked up like criminals. They still need an education. I also spent time at 2 think tanks. Currently, I'm the Vice President of Education Policy and Government Affairs at the California Policy Center. We're an education and government oversight nonprofit. We don't take 1 penny for the government. Our job is to hold them accountable. We created this website called Transparent California, where you can go and actually look up every single person in the state. That was us. You can find what every single person, their whole salary, benefits, everything. We did that.
It's been a tremendous help from me.
The job is to make sure that we hold those that we put in office accountable. But I also was the guy that helped write the school choice initiatives that were being passed around last year. That was my handiwork. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get on the ballot this year. We're going to work again and try for that. But when we had to put that down in January, because we couldn't reach the threshold, I said, we've got to do something. That's why I decided to run for superintendent. Because I really believe that at the top, you may not have all the power and authority the legislature or the government has. That doesn't matter. You have a bully pulpit. And you have the ear of policymakers and legislators. So I want to put somebody out there that could actually do this and decide what our education future looks like. California used to be the best education system in the world, hands down.
It did. I went through it.
Yes. It used to be premier. People would leave their homes from across the world and country to come here. That's why LA County is 10.4 million people. The superintendent of public instruction is the director of the education department, sits on the board of education, sits on the commission for teacher credentialing. We need better teachers. We need more of them. And also sits on all 3 of the higher education boards, community colleges, state universities, and UC system regions. That is an amazing amount of power in terms of the pulpit. I want to be that person. I want parents to own the system. That's how it was all set up in the Constitution in 1849. The superintendent of public instruction was put in there and voted on by the people on purpose. So the governor doesn't have all the control. So, if you like what I had to say, I'm asking you to do 3 things. One is support me financially. I didn't come down here on pixie dust. It costs money to run a whole state. There's 22 million voters in California, and in the primary, out of the 22 million voters, all of you which got your ballots mailed to you in the mail, only 7.3 actually showed up and turned them in. 1/3. And out of that 1/3, only 6.3 voted in my race. So it doesn't take a lot of votes for me to win. But I need to convince enough people that that's possible. So in my race, I can raise as much money as people are willing to give me, but $8,100 the max. But if you can throw out $100 or $200 or $500 because you believe your kid's education system is important, Scott's right there, he'll take your money. Seriously, he will. Or you go to my website and donate there, and then he doesn't have to touch it. But we need financial support. So again, if you walk out of here, please leave us with some money. And make sure you also leave the candidates here, Julie and the other school board candidates, some money too. It costs money to print signs and to travel and to make hotels and rent a car, and print material. It's expensive. Share on social media and websites with your neighbors. Get out there and let them know that you're supporting good candidates. Don't hide your light underneath a bushel. You've got to let people know there are solid people who want to stand up for you. I'll listen to you. I answer emails and phone calls. I got one yesterday. She called me. She said, hey, I want to talk to Lance and tell him how I feel about this thing. And I said, well, you're talking to him. She was surprised. I got my first piece of hate mail today. It was so awesome. It went so long. And I only have 2 decent trolls on Twitter.
It means you're doing something right.
I know, but it's depressing.
Right?
Julie has way more. You gotta believe this can all be fixed. Right? It's not gonna be fixed overnight though. It's gonna take time. But I want as much participation in the process as possible. So if you have good ideas, let me know. If you have thoughts or people to connect me with, let me know. I will literally talk to anybody at any point in time, at any length of time, if they're willing to have a conversation. If you have friends that aren't convinced and they need to be convinced, you can go to my social media accounts and check all that stuff out too. You can read my website. I have a long blog that talks about just about everything you possibly want to talk about. I want to have good ideas because good public policy makes good politics. But frankly, unless you guys are involved, then I've wasted my time here. If you showed up here tonight, make sure that you're taking this message back, that you're sharing it. It multiplies. Because we have a consequential election in November. And frankly, if it doesn't change in November, I don't know that my kids in public schools can last much longer. And I don't want to leave this place. I'm not leaving that up in here.
Right? Hello.
So anyway, I appreciate your time. I'm happy to answer any questions, but thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.